All right, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Estate Planning Expert Series, a show where I talk to financial advisors who are making estate planning a bigger part of their practice. Now, today I'm joined by Charles Thomas. He's a CFP and founder of Intrepid Eagle Finance. Charles specializes in working with Christian families, helping them align their financial decisions with their values while navigating all the day-to-day money management, long-term financial planning, and estate planning, which is why he's here today. And while his practice is served in rooting faith-based families, all of the insights he's going to share today apply to all families, right? All full family financial planning insights that we're going to talk about today. They're valuable for any family looking for clarity, coordination, and confidence in their financial life. And if you're an advisor tuning in, of course, you'll be able to take some things away that Charles has shared today, maybe to implement it in your own estate planning journey working with your clients. So, Charles, welcome to the show.
Good to be with you, Diana.
Okay, so where are you dialing in from?
I hail from the big city of Clover, South Carolina, just outside of Charlotte.
Okay. I don't think I've ever heard of Clover, but I have heard of Charlotte. So there we go.
Close enough.
Well, thank you for joining me. And I want to
Of
dive
course.
right into something that I noticed on your website when I was doing some research. And you and I obviously get to work together on other estate planning projects and content. So I know a little bit about you, but what I really like about the way you position yourself is the full family financial planning. I think now more than ever, it's super important to have niche focus in financial services. And I love how you really focus on family, including estate planning. So, what does this actually mean in practice, this full family financial planning? And how is it different from the way most families experience financial advice today?
Sure. Great question. One I love to talk about. So, my experience, I've been in financial services for over 2 decades at this point, and what I got for a lot of my career and what I still see a lot of places is when you go dig into the way that we in financial services talk about families. We talk about husband, we talk about wife, and then everybody else is an afterthought. We treat other family members, and when we're in a time when multi-generational families are coming back more into style. So even if for kids, we treat them like other residents who happen to live at the same address, and
Mm.
maybe we'll talk about them as a tax deduction, but that's about all the time we spend on these people. And that's not the way people think about their family. Everybody that's in your family, whether they're 2, 20, or 90, is important. And that's the way people think about that. And that's, to me, that's what we need to be thinking about from our side of the table. That's why we're structured that way for our firm. We talk about every single member of the family. They have a place to play in the financial plan. They have their own hopes, their desires, their dreams, worries. And we have to account for that. And that's a little bit harder than it sounds. That might sound obvious to think about, but it gets missed a lot of times. We treat kids like they're overhead as opposed to important parts of a family's financial plan and, by extension, their estate plan.
We're going to talk more about estate planning. One thing I always appreciate when we get to talk is you sharing, you're bringing these children into the conversation. And I think that is so important for estate planning. But we're going to maybe back up just a little bit because I think there are plenty of families out there who work with advisors and maybe they're focused on budgeting or investing, but they're not totally talking about the estate plan. Where do you see, what risk do you see when this happens?
It's a great question. So, first, budgeting, investing, very important. Don't get me wrong. I talk about it. That's something I love, and it's very close to my heart. But it's different because that has a cadence to it. You think about when we think about budgeting. Well, when we budget, we usually think monthly because most of our expenses, bills, things like that, they show up monthly. So our hand is forced. We think about doing that monthly. When you think about investing, for most people, that is my paycheck deduction for my 401k. Again, there's a cadence that happens to that. Every paycheck, if I get paid every 2 weeks, that 10% comes out of my paycheck, it goes into my 401k. It's a cadence that happens, and we expect it to be something that we'll have on repeat and we're going to do for a long time.
Right.
And the problem is we need to apply that to other places. And estate planning is one of the real risks for folks that get a plan together, they get a will and all the important documents. They get it done, they take a breath and think, well, we've got that done. We're going to put that in a drawer or maybe hopefully a fireproof safe. And we don't have to look at that unless something bad happens. That part of my life is done. I don't have to worry about that again. And that's such a mistake because all these other parts can change, and it's not the words on the page need to reflect that. So you think about all these things that can happen with your family. You can add, or hopefully not, you can lose some family members. You think about some of the supporting players that are important in a estate plan, like a guardian or an executor, executrix. Those people can change as well. What's the right person now might be not be the right person 10 years from now. You need to revisit those things. The other part of that is like the environment can change too. The rules of the road that we have to build these plans around, those can change as well. It's something that it doesn't lend itself as easy as investing and saving does, but it's still important to keep coming back to.
And I feel like that's where you play such a pivotal role, and where all advisors can play such a pivotal role is coming back to it, right? Including it in your annual meetings and making sure it's on the task list, right? Of something to return back to, conversations to return back to. And you've helped write so many articles on the Trust and Will Learn Center about this topic, right? Like, how do you make sure it's an ongoing conversation versus just a one and done? Now, I want to talk about maybe families that are just getting started. What are maybe the first estate planning conversations they should be having, even if their assets aren't complicated yet? Because I think there's a lot of families out there who, especially new families and new couples as they start families, who feel, well, we don't really have all the assets that we need. You need to be wealthy to have an estate plan, but that's so far from the truth. So maybe what are those conversations looking like? What should they be talking about?
Yeah, that's such a great question because I hear the word complicated a lot. When people say, well, that person's not complicated. And I often find myself challenging that idea because people get in the mindset, well, complicated is something I'll have later on in life, so I can leave some of these decisions until then. And the reality is the complexity may be different then, but it doesn't mean it's not there. Because I'll tell you a lot. What I experience a lot is folks who are even talk about you've been married for a couple of years. If I go to the average couple like that, and maybe they're having their first kid, and ask them, do you feel like things are uncomplicated? They're going to look at me like I have a third eye. They're going to look at me like I'm crazy because it doesn't feel uncomplicated. And in reality, it's not. So I think complicated is a bit of a misnomer that lures some folks into the idea of not taking action when they should. And that's a mistake. But back to your question around like, what should people be thinking about when they're first starting out? And I think that just a lot of that has to do with asking questions. And some of those questions are hard. Like, if I passed away tomorrow, like, what is my hope for you when I leave you behind? Saying that to your spouse, or saying that about like maybe young kids, saying like, if I pass away or both of us pass away, like, what would I hope would happen? What do I hope happens with our loved ones who'd be picking up the pieces, taking care of this child or children? What do I want to happen? Do I have an opinion about where they live? Do I have an opinion about where they go to school? About their upbringing, things like that. Just asking some of those questions that most people have never thought about before, I think can go a long way to figuring out what are our priorities. And then what do we do with some of the right documents and tools to make sure those things spring into place if that event does happen.
These are such emotional conversations. And I'm glad that you brought up tools, because I definitely want to talk about structure around this. And I think technology can serve a very important role in this process for advisors and for their clients. So as planning becomes more holistic, more tech enabled, we're in this crazy shift now with AI, but just in general, how do you see dashboards and platforms like Trust and Well, which you work with us? How do you see that working together to sort of modernize the way that families plan and update and stay engaged with their estate plans over time?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Our clients' lives do not revolve around the calendars that we keep.
Mhm.
We have to evolve to adapt to the things that happen in their lives as things happen. I'll give you a great example where this played out for me a couple of months ago with one of our clients. With a client, their family was out of town visiting grandparents. They live several states apart from each other. They're visiting and called me up and said, "Hey, I know we got another bit till our next meeting, but I was hoping I could ask you a quick question. I'm so sorry I'm bothering you." Of course, I say you're not bothering me. What's going on? They said, "Well, we came to visit and we had a realization,
Mm.
and we're worried about our kids and what's going to happen to them. Can Do you mind reminding me like who gets our kids? I'm sorry, I just don't remember this." I said, "No problem." Because I had this in an easily accessible place, I got this answer in about 60 seconds. If I'd have had to go and say, "Well, we can talk about it when you get back into town. Let me go dig it out of a file folder somewhere or call around. Let me call your estate planning attorney," or something like that, this would have played out differently because the reason they were asking is they had the realization that we think our grandparents are going to get the kids. And I confirmed that was the case.
Mm.
What they realized was this was home for them, for mom and dad. It was not home for their kids.
Mm.
And so they started to talk about, where our kids are in middle school, early high school, they've got relationships, they've got school friends, they've got relationships at church, in the community, they've got sports teams they're on. I don't want to pluck them out of that if something happens to this. And right now, that's what it is. And so we've got to rethink what our plan is for this based on that. So, okay. I'm glad you figured that out now so we can take action. Enjoy the rest of your visit, but we'll talk about it when you get home. We can talk about how to do this.
Yeah.
Because I had that at my fingertips, that was a real breakthrough for them to spur some action and some change they needed to make. And again, if I'd have had to dig that out of a deep file folder in a cabinet somewhere, it might not have played out like that. We might not have gotten to that answer when we needed to get to it and figure out like what the change they needed to make.
That is such a powerful example, and why I'm such an advocate for technology in this aspect of your business. I mean, all parts of an advisory business are now tech enabled, but this in particular, something that traditionally has just been a tangible physical asset that you can touch and hold and put away somewhere, and then maybe you can't even find where you put it away.
Right.
It's all changed.
That's right.
I love that. Okay, so we typically have advisors that tune into this show because they're trying to, maybe they're just like, hey, I just want to start thinking about where this intersection between financial advice and estate planning happens and how it looks. Or maybe they're starting to dip their toe in the water and they want to implement it, but they're still a little bit hesitant. So I always ask this question because every guest I talk to has rich experience offering estate planning to their clients as a financial advisor. But yeah, it's still very new for a lot of advisors. What advice would you give them?
At the end of the day, like the bottom line I'll give to folks who are thinking about this or hesitant about it is your clients want this.
Mm.
They may not say they want it, but they want this. And I can tell you that from having this conversation a bunch of times and being in an environment where I offer this because we made a decision in our firm to get deep in the weeds with this. I've been other places in my career where this was not offered, and I can tell you, it makes a difference in the relationship, and your clients will appreciate it. It's very, very valuable. It's not it's to just tell somebody, go get a will. Here's a checklist of some things you should think about. Good luck. It's not enough. It's not enough. One, because it's not what people want, but it's also it just doesn't work. If you go out there and look at a lot of cases where somebody goes and spends $3,000 for an estate, a very comprehensive estate plan. A lot of times you go look at that and all the follow up, all the implementation, all the upkeep, things like that, they don't happen. And estate planning attorneys will tell you all kinds of stories where they've got somebody who's got the right documents but didn't do the right things with them. So even getting that is just not enough, and that needs to be interlocked and in cooperation with the rest of a financial plan for it to be effective. It's really important.
That is the perfect note to end on. I think it's a very great piece of advice for advisors listening. Thank you so much, Charles, for coming on the show and sharing your experience, your stories. I always say stories stick. As you know, this is something I drill in when we get to meet and talk about creating content. The stories stick, and just hearing the story of your client and them needing access to that information so quickly, and you being able to deliver that because of technology and this process you've built is truly beautiful. So thank you. And thank you to everyone who is tuned in today. Happy Tuesday. I had to look at the calendar really quickly because I'm forgetting what day of the week it is. Happy Tuesday. We're 13 days into the year. It's things are moving quickly, but right now is an awesome time for you to take a step back and just sort of reflect. What do you want for 2026? What do you want your clients to experience? How do you want to evolve your practice? And I say quite frequently, estate planning is one of the best things you can do for your clients. So if you want to learn more about how you can get started with estate planning technology as a financial advisor, feel free to scan the QR code down at the bottom of the screen, or just head over to trustandwell.com/advisors. All right. Thanks so much, Charles. Thanks, everyone.